Important not to forget the altitude, he thought as he walked. The altitude and the sudden change in temperature. He'd only been living here a month, and this was his first time walking inside a cloud. The phenomenon felt otherworldly, as if he'd found some portal to this strange land, or, a simpler explanation, as if he'd just dropped off to sleep and this was a dream, light, fragile, that any sudden jolt might bring to an end. Well, that first line definitely sets a remarkable mood, right? It begins with the banal, practical thought of altitude, and in just a few sentences, it spirals into the surreal and existential. We watch the narrator's own mind rationalize the uncanny that walking through clouds is the portal to a strange land, before settling on the more vulnerable truth. This feels like a fragile dream. It establishes the book's voice perfectly, a mind trying to ground itself in logic while navigating a reality that feels profoundly unstable and temporary. And with this, let's actually get started talking about this book, shall we? Hello and welcome to the Spiraken Book Club. I'm your host Zan, saying konnichiwa, aloha, buongiorno, and what's up. Hope you're doing well and hope you're excited for another fun-filled episode of this awesome podcast and video that you can find at www.spiraken.com. We're also at youtube.com/Spiraken, Spotify, Stitcher, and various other social media sites. Just type in SPIRAK and I'll get you find one way or the other. And remember, if you're watching on YouTube, remember to like, share, subscribe, and as always, click on that bell for notification for when we release new episodes. And with that in mind, let's actually get to it because this is our second entry in the 45 by 45 project, where I'm going to read 45 books before my 45th birthday next year. And we're on book 2, and this is a novel which, well, I was looking for X names. This one was very difficult to find, and I was drawn into something that was very different than what I expected. And the book is An Infinite Sadness by Antonio Xerxensky. And before I go any further, I need to apologize to Mr. Xerxensky because he is not Portuguese, as I said earlier. He's actually Brazilian. Apologies about that. And this is his story that's been translated into multiple different languages, and this is the English debut. This came out originally, and I believe it was copyright in 2021, so only 4 years ago during the pandemic. And let's actually get to it because, actually, you know what? I'm going to actually read the jacket copy because usually I do my own personal synopsis, but this would explain it better than how I would try to do this. In a small village in the Swiss Alps in the aftermath of World War II, Nicholas walks the wooded path between the sanitarium where he works and his home, alert to a possible menace hiding in the trees, haunted by the possibility of an evil just out of sight. His days are spent ministering to minds that have been grievously damaged by the years of brutal conflict, violence suffered, and violence abetted. The patients have different stories, but none of them have left the war behind. Anna, his wife, looks for meaning among the scientists she works with, exploring the dark matter that orders the universe. Failures of nerve and intrusion from the past dog them both, and neither is able to fully inhabit the present, that moment that is also, to Einstein and in Jewish tradition, eternity. This is the story of a man who is dealing with several issues: grief from World War II, also shouldering the burdens of his patients while dealing with issues with his wife. He is trying to navigate this while staying sane in a world where he should not be sane. Nicholas is someone who he has moved to this small Alps village to almost find a restart in Switzerland, and he is trying to navigate this. He moved his wife there. It's a small town with maybe a population of 30 people, including them, where most of the neighbors do not talk to him or they'll say hi, but that's about it. There's the tavern, there's a wine shop which has old Bordeaux, but nothing crazy. And what he does is he goes to work and he tries to navigate with his coworkers who are all not crazy, but they're all dealing with these various individuals. And you have people coming in to add and introduce new methods to this job. Well, he's trying to stay true to what he knows while also fighting potential depression. His wife, on the other hand, she's in this small town in a country where she's not allowed to work. And she eventually chooses to just get on a train to Geneva every week to get a job with a bunch of scientists who are studying the atom and subatomics and dark matter. She's fascinated by this. Meanwhile, whenever she engaged with her husband, it's not going so well because he either doesn't want to talk about it, or when he talks about it, he's bringing the most depressing, sad stories ever. And from Nicholas's point of view, he's dealing with a lot of screwed up people. They're all dealing with issues from the war. You have a young woman from America who's there, who her situation is she worked for Los Alamos, and due to the success slash horrific results of that project, she's haunted by the nightmares of the victims of it. You have another individual who's a soldier who can't get rid of the victims of his storied career. He's has hundreds of medals, and he's just ready to be done with it. You have another individual who he is perfectly fine. He used to work for, he worked for a bank that may or may not have worked with third party, but it's fine. He, even though he says he sees Satan as his master, and he's totally for it, which is kind of crazy. But they're all crazy, let's be honest. But it's he believes Satan is his true master, that he rules everything, blah 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 blah. Sorry, that came a little much, but his thing is I don't want to spoil too much. I'm going to say too much. Another person is dealing with mobility issues, and then you have his colleagues who are also traditionalists who believe in the Freud mentality and the diagnosis and the discussion will cure the illness when we understand what's going on. And then you have individuals who are now believing that Jung is no longer a viable psychiatrist because he associated with Germany in World War II when he started his career. Even though he became an anti fascist, he was dealing with the situation, and they are all saying he's useless. You have other individuals who are going against the use of various techniques that are being introduced that are shown to work. Example, art therapy, where you use your own personal emotions to create work. You work through your pain. And it's a way to do that. It works, but they're like, no, it doesn't work. That's something that crazy people do. We don't need to worry about that. And then you have the medications that are showing up, which they've been proven to work through trials, but they're like, no, no, no. This isn't something you could solve with a pill. It's not the flu. It's something else. It's something that only we as psychiatrists can deal with. And Nicholas is dealing with all this. Also talking with several individuals who he's trying to negate their situation and talk to them about it. This is that story. And it is one where it has a unique narrative to it, but then it gets bogged down in the psychological study of it. It's fascinating as there is discussion about the various elements and theories, in him postulating on melancholia and depression, and more importantly, as we learn more about Nicholas and the forbidden word, which the story talks about, what his past happened that leads to this point in time and where he's at. This is a story that is harrowing, depressing, real, and raw. It will leave a sad taste in your mouth. And because of that reason, it's one of these stories that I could not resonate with. I love stories that make me feel different emotions, which is fine, but this ends up harping on the same thing over and over and over and over again. Maybe it's the translation, but I'm not entirely sure. This is depressing as shit, which is fine, which is what you're going for, infinite sadness. And even the quote about it, which is an amazing quote, it shows how this is because it is life, and it's that. But we're all so sad, so terribly sad, and we're immersed in this infinite sadness, a cosmic sadness, the size of the universe and of the empty space inside an atom. This is that feeling that everyone has. It's this moment that you have, and it's so draining. It's that feeling of just your the weight of it all. And like I said, you have the all this is happening after World War II, where neighbor turned upon neighbor, where you would come home one day, you were in Europe and the neighbor's house would be broken into because they were reported, and you just have to live with it, or you move away, or you change your name. It's a powerful story from that element, but then it gets into the bogged down nature of it. There are pages upon pages of scientific postulations on atoms and neutrons, which is interesting, but it doesn't fit the story. It's frustrating and perturbing. And then just going back to, we know he's depressed. We know that there's a problem, but there's nothing that happens with it. It kind of drives us crazy. And like I said, there's some good to this. And this is a love letter to psychiatrists. And I love that this is something which is like, these are the people who help make the world go around and keep us sane. And I love that fact. It's really well done. And there's a statement, a quote in this book, which totally, it just shows it for what it is. And it makes me happy that it does that. And the quote is very simple. It's just simply, this is where we psychiatrists come in, where we need to act, helping these people to find meaning in life and to keep getting out of bed every morning until they're old. Sometimes that motivates them, even if what that is suffering. Their suffering could be the meaning. They've suffered and they've endured. The person who said this is a doctor who went through the camps, and he's like, I endured, and it is pompous to believe that, if you suffer and you can't make it through, you failed. But it's that the psychiatrists are there to help us get out of bed every day, and that's one of the better moments of this book. And honestly, well, I'm getting depressed just talking about this. This book is really depressing, but maybe that's what this is. Maybe it's what Xerxensky wants. He wants us to be depressed by this novel about the nature of evil, and about how life calls us forced to live. I don't know. It's about finding reasons to live, and that's fine, but it gets bogged down with a lot of the circumstances behind it. Now, besides the story, let's get into the actual production quality. This is an amazing production quality that is done by Charcoal Press. It's got French folds in it with Pollock work on the interior and a Rorschach test on the exterior. And that's an important point because they bring up Rorschach tests all the time, and Pollock as well. And Pollock almost being a Rorschach test, where it's like you actually see Pollock and you're like able to interpret his work. And maybe that's a Rorschach test. You're not sure, but anyway, I digress. Um, However, besides that, it just, the narrative that starts out with it just declines so much, and you knew the ending beforehand, and usually you'd have okay, this kind of works. And compared to the epic life living from last week with Project Hail Mary, this does the opposite, where it's like I feel like I need to take a couple of drinks afterwards, and not in a contemplative way. I want to put this behind me. Maybe I resonate with the person. I don't know. However, for that reason, I have to give this, well, for An Infinite Sadness by Antonio Xerxensky, a typical reading material, local correctional facility, correctional institute, or is psychiatric institute or correctional facility, diagnosed with a compelling premise, but ultimately suffers from an identity crisis and chronic melancholia. That is exactly what this is. It has this compelling premise, but it just has an identity crisis that doesn't know what it wants to be. Doesn't know if it wants to be a narrative or if it wants to be a psychological discussion. And if it picked one route and went that way, I think this would be a stronger book. And it is a good book. And also, I give it a caveat because this is a translation, and sometimes the words that are in that language cannot be translated as well. Like saudade is one of my favorite words. It doesn't translate in English, but it has a meaning which would benefit from something. There could be words that were translated that were changed because they changed the voice of it. I mean, there's an example of someone screwing up a translation would be She Who Has Never Known Men. It's a book which has become the huge rage because of TikTok. And we might talk about this on this podcast. I'm not entirely sure if we will, but we're going to find out. However, The original translation was The Maiden of Silence. They changed the title and they made it more analytical, and everyone hated it. And then afterwards, they retranslated it and to the original title, and it suddenly became popular and worked. So it could be something as simple as the translation just is off, and that could be why. So for me personally, this is our second lowest rating. However, I give it a caveat. I want to bump this up to Gift from a Crazy Aunt Mira, okay, but forgettable, because it's okay. It's not great. Could be a lot better. But let me know your thoughts. If you've read An Infinite Sadness, what are your thoughts? Do you think I'm missing the point or I'm not analyzing it enough? I mean, I could get into a full analytical discussion on it. However, I don't really want to get into that. I don't want to delve back into the darkness that is that book. And yeah, some of you are gonna be like, "Oh well, if you don't like this, you're not gonna like something like An Infinite Life." Well, yeah, Infinite Life is A Little Life is a story which that is just depressing, and I don't understand why people like it. It's like watch The Passion of the Christ. You watch to deal with it, and never again. That book is one of those books I read, and I never want to read it again. However, I digress. So, with that in mind, let's actually get to the next book in our little adventure, shall we? Because the first one was a sci-fi story. This was a more grounded into reality uh, narrative involving a lot of depression. I need to get something a little bit lighter in my head. So I thought, why don't I just talk about the thing that everyone's been talking about and we're talking about? Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. Yeah, I'm going to go with a smutty dragon book. Is it going to be good? Is it going to be bad? Well, we're going to find out in a week. And this is the special holiday edition that is exclusive only to BNN, and it looked really nice. It has the bonus content in there, including an extra chapter with Zidane. Why do I know these names when I haven't read it? Well, reasons. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Let me know your thoughts. Are you interested in reading this book? Do you have no interest at all? Leave the comments down below. Let me know. Anyway, as usual, I am your host, Zan. I am Gonzville. I'll catch you guys next time. And as usual, keep reading books. I will see you later.